And one day the ma came to me, the great mother came to me, and she showed me she's in a constant state of ecstatic orgasm. That's what she creates from ecstatic orgasm. I mean, I get orgasmic just speaking about it, like literally orgasmic energy runs through my body. And she gave me a taste of it. She gave me like this tiny grain of sand to her beach of orgasm. Oh my God, I couldn't even handle it. It was so intense, but so beautiful. And she said, this is what all of creation comes from.
Welcome to Super Normalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the seemingly supernatural. Join me, CJ Barnaby, in the liminalist space to explore less charted realms of existence and to unravel the mysteries of life experience. Each episode, I'm blessed with the opportunity to talk to regular people from across the world where they openly share their understanding and wisdom in service to others. If you're looking to upgrade your life, you've come to the right place. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll bring you great transforming conversations each week. My treasured viewers and listeners, if you have a life story or healing modality or unique knowledge that you'd love to share, reach out to me at supernormalized@proton.me. Let's together embrace acceptance of the supernatural and unusual, what it really is, completely normal. On this episode of Supernormalized, we have Alara Sage. She went through a pivotal life moment where she had her life changed dramatically by experiences that allowed her to tune into what she says is her sexy as fuck. To put it plainly, it actually allowed her to recover her authentic self and her understanding of how she is in the world and how a lot of the things weren't aligned. Over time, she worked those things out with the help of her intuition and her higher self, and went on to start a business which she has online, which helps other people to find their way as well. And a part of that is discovering what you call it, like the current of the divine feminine and how important that is in the lives of beautiful women and also for men as well. So if that's something that interests you, I'm sure it will be. It's a great conversation. On with the show. Welcome to Supernormalized, Alara Sage. Alara, you've had massive life changes that happened sort of spontaneously, we could say. And it changed you so dramatically and put you on a completely different life path. And we're here to talk about that today because it actually allows you to help others to discover their path to being sexy as fuck, as you like to put it, I think. So can you tell us what happened? What happened to you? I mean, it's Kundalini awakening and you were driving a car, is that right?
Yeah, I've had lots of spontaneous moments. So yes, that is one of them where I was, this was back in 2014-ish. And I got into my car. I was driving my car. At the time, I was doing equine physical therapy. So I did physical therapy 2 courses.
Oh, wow.
And I was driving to go visit the horses. And I'm driving down, luckily, like a small road in the back, the back roads here. And my higher self comes in and says, Om 3 times. And oming was, I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't practice it. It wasn't like part of my practice. I was like, okay, higher self, but I'll do it. Sure. I'll play the game. So I took a nice deep breath. All the way to the end. I did that 3 times. And at the end of that 3rd breath, an energy shot through my body, out my crown, and I went into full body orgasm. And I pulled the car over. And gave myself the space to be in it because I had never had a full body orgasm
Mm,
sexually, let
yeah.
alone in my car driving the road. And yeah, it went on for a couple of minutes. It was just delicious and delightful in all aspects of the meaning. And after a couple of minutes, it subsided, the body's sensations. And I really found myself just in pure ecstatic bliss. And I had no idea what had happened to me. At the time, I knew, again, kind of vaguely what Kundalini was, but I didn't practice anything to do with Kundalini. And I didn't know that that's what had happened to me at that point. So I got back on the road and I was just lit AF. I mean, turned the radio, the stereo up and was like dancing in my car and waving at everybody. And I was just so ecstatic. And I remember working on the horses that day. They soaked that energy up. They loved it so much. Deep, deep healing that they went through that day just from that energy emanating from me. And I still had no idea what happened to me. And the next 5 months was very, very different. What ended up occurring was, when the Kundalini shot through my body, she released a lot of this pent, stored, repressed emotion that I hadn't processed. At that time in my life, I considered myself, quote unquote, emotionally stable, but I was actually emotionally suppressed, along with sexually suppressed and a lot of other suppression. So I found myself in this very chaotic space where one minute I would be, crying on the floor in this like deep feeling of grief. The next minute I would be like raging and just screaming at the top of my head. And the next minute I would be kind of laughing somewhat hysterically. And I asked my higher self, am I going crazy? And my higher self said, breathe and allow, as higher selves do. And I had no idea. I just kept doing it. I asked my higher self several times because 5 months is a considerable amount of time. It was most intense those first couple of months. And then by the end of the 5 months, it was subsiding. It was coming back into equilibrium. And that's when a book came into my space called Kundalini Awakening. And the first chapter was about spontaneous awakening. And it just fit the bill in all aspects. So, but that was just the beginning. Sometimes people think, oh, then that was it. I was awakened. But that was, it was the beginning that showed me a vast contrast of what I was living in versus what I was capable of. And what it showed me that I was living in a numb and shut down state of being that I was totally unaware of until I had this experience.
It sounds like you had a really big spiritual emergence there with that. And yeah, identifying where you weren't being really true to life and source, and in doing so, it opened you up. What happened after that? I mean, obviously you had a taste of the truth and you could see what wasn't true anymore. How did that unfold?
Yeah, very intensely. I'm kind of an intense person anyways. I've had very powerful pivots in my life where I just jump all in. So at that time, I was married and I had two young children, very young, 2 and 4, I believe. And from the outside, my life appeared perfect. But that awoke me to the fact that it wasn't perfect. And a couple of months, I kind of processed the information. And then I had a very strong sense that I needed to radically shift my life. And my current husband, even though a very beautiful and wonderful person, wasn't really capable of the transition that I needed to go through. So I divorced him and, left my home. We owned a home and sold all of that. And uh, yeah, became a single mother and really owned the fact that I needed to really pursue this version of myself.
Mm. And in pursuing that, what actually happened with your work? I mean, did you continue with all of your work that you were doing at the time? I mean, what were you doing? Were you working with horses then still?
Yeah, that all shifted really quickly. It was already in shift. It was already
Okay.
starting to transit.
Yeah.
And I was already at that point, I was working on the horses physically, but I was also doing animal communication.
Mm.
So that was over the phone. And I transitioned fully into that. And then that even shifted into people. One day, higher self came to me and said, "You're going to start working with people." And I was like, you know what, higher self, I don't want to do that. I'll stick to the animals. And I, it's like sometimes this stuff just happens. Every phone call after that for animal communication, all of the information was based with a person.
Oh,
And I was like, I can't keep calling myself this when they're calling about their dog and all of it's about them.
yeah.
So I very quickly shifted out of that just from a place of integrity.
Well, it does sound like the universe was setting you up for that change, and you just realized what it was and you embraced it. So
Absolutely.
how does that work? I mean, because you obviously you're working on the phone with these people and talking to them, and in contact with your higher self throughout the conversation. Is it like intuition that clairaudient, clairsentient? How does that all work?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that we all have the clairs and we have all the clairs and so I've cultivated those clairs. So yes, it was all the clairs. I was in contact with the animal and kind of like their higher self, their spirit. And then the the person was coming through and then I was connected to my higher self as well. So kind of depended on the conversation. Sometimes the animals per se wouldn't necessarily know information. And so that's when I would access more of higher self information.
So the animals are telling you about their owners and where they're stuck.
No, the higher selves were just telling me.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
It
you're
was just
bypassing that.
going straight. Yeah, it wasn't by choice. That's just what was happening. And
Mm.
it was beautiful because I mean, I already knew this. I already knew that most of the quote unquote issues were actually coming from the people and it was being projected on and absorbed kind of by the animals. But, this was like, it was so blatant in my face. I wasn't given any information about the animal. The people had some massive transformations. Like there was this one woman who called me and she's like, my dog won't stop barking. He never did this before. And it was like, what are you not telling your husband? There's something you're not. And we had this whole conversation about her and her husband. Okay, like go have this conversation with your husband. 2 weeks later, I got this email. Oh my God, I had the conversation with my husband. My dog stopped barking.
Isn't that interesting? So yeah, like their manifestation of whatever issue they needed to address was actually coming through their pets.
Yes.
Wild, wild. So in what ways did your exploration of your subconscious beliefs around money, power, and worthiness shape your path towards personal growth and empowerment?
Well, so then I had another experience.
Yeah.
And this is like one of like many that I've had throughout my life. In 2021, my higher self came to me and told me that my money, like actually what happened was my higher self showed me in meditation a massive energetic debt that I had
Mm.
and asked if I was ready to karmically wipe this clean. And I said yes. And, I knew that like I would have to financially fill that. Now, I don't necessarily believe that's always how it works with karma. And it's not like, $20 for $20 or anything like that. But for whatever reason, well, I know many of the reasons why it happened because of the lessons I needed to learn.
Mm.
So it's less about the money than it was about my learning process. But yeah, about 2 weeks later, all my money was stolen. So I was warned about it, but I still found myself in this energy. It was scam energy. I was completely kind of oblivious what was happening in the moment of it. And so even though I knew that it was going to happen, it's like I didn't have the capacity to stop it per se. And yeah, so all of my money was gone in a snap of a finger. And I hit this first emotional sense of fear, but then I was like, you know what? I can do this. I've got this. I've always been able to create what I desire. I've always been able to do that. So I will just simply create more money. And what happened instead was the complete opposite.
Oh,
My six-figure business just crumbled, and all of my income just dropped. And, I was using all of my techniques that I'm familiar with to create our reality, quantum mechanics, being aware of my state of being, imagination, being really clear in my thoughts. But what I wasn't really being honest with myself about was some really deep seated shame and unworthiness. And so the whole point of this was to really look at that. And what I found was the shame was really connected to my sexual power. I had had several lives where I had been a sex slave, where sex had been used against me. I had used it against other people. In fact, one life during this process, I was in my cervix for about 2 weeks, shifting this like just grotesque energy around sex. And the life that I was working on, I shared with my mother, but my mother wasn't my mother in that life. We were both just women of a harem, part of royalty. And in this life, yeah, we were sex slaves. And, all of our everything, we had to give sex in order to be fed, right? In order to survive. So I was shifting this like intense energy around that. And my father calls me and says, I have something to tell you. Now, I don't, I'm on good terms with my parents, but I don't speak to them regularly. And I said, yeah, what? And he goes, your mother has been diagnosed with cervical cancer. And I didn't even know she was sick. And it was all to do with the energy held in my cervix as well. So I was like, yeah, I totally get it. I know exactly why. And I told them all about it. And I mean, that was just one example of all of this energy that I had to shift and
mm,
transform.
mm,
And what I learned through this process is that power, personal power, true power, which we often, our reflection, our belief of power is usually force, like governments, politicians, these kinds of people, they're not using power, they're using force. So true personal power, wealth, money, and sexual power. These are the three primary wounds of humanity, and they're all the same. And so, through that healing of that deep seated energy, I was really able to truly shift my relationship with money, my relationship with my sexual power, my personal power, and recreate my business. But this time, all on true foundation, right? Because before it was rooted in unworthiness and shame.
mm. Wow, that's hugely powerful. And like, how did your parents accept that information when you told them? I mean, that's pretty huge that they could even listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, I have been fully expressed, for many years. When that happened with my Shakti, it triggered my parents. They got kind of angry with me, and why are you getting divorced? You have a perfect, doing this to your children. And I just started like, look, this is who I am. Like, and I'm not gonna suppress myself any longer. It makes me very emotional right now. And it was a rough period there for us because they couldn't accept it at first, even though they've always been very supportive of me. And I just stuck with it. I did my best to speak clearly, to fully express myself. And so this has been many years where
Mm,
I don't hide who I am. I speak completely and fully. Um, and they received it completely. And, my mother went into remission after I went and visited her, and we had a very
brilliant.
healing session around it.
That's amazing. And also, yeah, bringing that truth to ground obviously is what caused that change.
Yeah. So
Mm,
powerful. It's for that awareness.
mm. How do you leverage your intuitive gifts as a mentor, womb shaman, and Shakti activator to help individuals release limitations and manifest their desires?
So, for me, I mean, those examples have really taught me how well we suppress And what I've really learned is denial is one of the most powerful tools that we have, right? When we deny something, we literally place it completely out of our awareness. We do that in a form of protection. So one of the ways that I help people is we have really clear conversations. I help people to really get to the root cause. So whenever we're working with something, the question is always, where was the first time in your entirety of a being, that this started to solidify into your space? So we'll go into different timelines, into past lives. Um, and also, I teach them how to use their breath. The breath to me is one of the most powerful tools that we have to shift energy, to move into a state of presence and stillness. You can use the breath to calm yourself, to release stress. You can use the breath to activate yourself. And so we use the breath to shift that energy and really bring them into their body, as well as activate their Shakti energy. And I just want to tell the audience that it's very rare to have an experience like I had with Shakti. Usually, Shakti is a much slower process and it's much, much, much more gentle. I don't want everybody thinking that that is what Shakti is.
Yeah, well, okay. So yeah, I think that yeah, it depends. I think maybe it's because you were actually ready for it and
Oh, yeah.
you had all of the universe aligned and the timing was right. I mean, at those moments when you said you were just in the car and your higher self pops in and says time to on, and that just puts you right in accord with the universe right in that moment and allowed it all to start.
Absolutely. There must have been like planetary alignment or something.
Well, I mean, I think we all punch a ticket when we come here, like, okay, well, this travel brochure looks really good. I think I'll have that body, and then we appear. So there is the story that we all have to live. So it's powerful when we actually do embrace that story and live it authentically, and like you say, not suppress things, because the suppression is pretty much the stopping of what's meant to be.
Yeah. And, I had this experience the other day, if you don't mind me sharing, where I was with a client. We were going into some of the energies of one of her core beliefs. And we witnessed this beautiful thing. And I had this massive activation in my session with her. And I was shown how when we really just say yes to our authentic self, even if we don't always understand who that is, right? We just say yes to continuing that process. It's just the most powerful thing that we can do on a soul level. So in with her, we were going back into the time of the witch trials, and seeing how so many people couldn't stand in their power in that era. And that was, it's all a learning process for consciousness. But now we're in this place where we can really say, this is who I am and I stand in that. And I was shown how, that's really what Jesus did. He stood in that self, in that I am consciousness through that entirety of torture, quite frankly. And when we do that, it's a massive ascension for our soul and for consciousness at large. I mean, it was breathtaking what I was shown, and really, like, I was crying with the beauty of what truly transpires when we have the courage to say, this is who I am and I stand in it.
Mm.
That's
This
sexy AF.
More power to you there. So I got a question for you around your cosmology and your belief systems. I mean, obviously you were a different person completely before this, and then you've turned into who you are now. What what to you was like your belief systems before, and then what would you say you are now when it comes to your understanding of how life unfolds?
That's such a beautiful question. Yeah, I definitely have always had a wide view of reality, and I've always
Mm.
been very connected.
Mm.
But I would say that the big shift was in, I was really in a state of unworthiness and inadequacy. Inadequacy is one of my core, I don't know if you know the gene keys, but it's my life's work. So it's something I'll be continuously learning through this process. But I was really in the energy of inadequacy. And because I was so subconsciously fearful of being seen as inadequate, I was very good. Nobody around me knew any idea that that's actually how I felt. I was deemed very confident, very courageous,
Mm.
because I put on this show to project into the physical reality like, no, 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 I've got this. I'm good. I'm super confident. When deep inside, I really didn't see myself in the light of God. I questioned myself. I had deep self doubt and distrust. And you know, that transformation of a feeling of, first off, that I can talk about it. I never would have admitted that before. Never to anybody. I don't care. Not my closest friend, not my husband, nobody. That was a well-kept secret. So my availability to share that, and like that it feels really good to share it, and that sense of deep self-trust. Now when I come across any type of challenge, there's just this serenity, this peace within me, and the availability to simply stay in that peace, in here, listen to, you know, the guidance I've always had, and take those steps powerfully to create my reality.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful. How do you create your reality?
I believe very strongly that one of the missing aspects for a lot of people is that connection to their sexual energy, their sexual power. Shakti, Kundalini Shakti is creative life force energy, and so is sexual energy. It's creative life force energy, and the universe is sexual. And one day the great mother came to me, and she showed me she's in a constant state of ecstatic orgasm. That's what she creates from ecstatic orgasm. I mean, I get orgasmic just speaking about it, like literally orgasmic energy runs through my body. And she gave me a taste of it. She gave me like this tiny grain of sand to her beach of orgasm. Oh my God, I couldn't even handle it. It was so intense, but so beautiful. And she said, this is what all of creation comes from. And the realization that we are sexual beings, that we are innocent in our sexuality, and that we can really harness that beautiful creative life force energy along with our Shakti, and learn how to move it through your body, learn how to enjoy it, learn how to be in the pleasure of it while you are imagining, because the imagination is so powerful, right? Our bodies do not know the difference between the imaginative space and quote unquote reality, because there truly is no difference. So when we imagine something with great depth, with clarity, with all of the senses, we're lighting our bodies up in that state of being. And then you add that beautiful creative energy to that, and you're really emanating and casting that out into, the holographic reality. And then it's about really listening as you are casting that out. It's not about how. That the how is not up to the human. The how is up to the higher self. So you don't have to know how you're going to create those big dreams and visions. You have to just believe it and activate it in your physical body. And when you do that, the guidance will come. And that's when you have to take action, because action actualizes all that beautiful juiciness into the physical reality. And that's how you
Mm.
create.
Mm. Mm. How does the guidance come for you? I mean, you must get intuitive sparks.
Yes, the intuition comes to me in various different ways, again, through all of the clairs. So I have communication with higher self, and really literally anybody that I want. If I want financial guidance, if I want business guidance, I just call that in. Um, and I get a lot of downloads as well. I also have intuitive hits, which are much more body based, right? Higher self is more audible and visual. Intuitive hits are body based. And then, I'm always hearing the universe. The holographic reality is always communicating with me as well. So I'm receiving that guidance through the holographic reality also.
You sound like a nature spirit to me, and what I mean by that is you are pretty much living like in like an animistic sort of state.
I am such a nature spirit. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I'm really honored that you saw that.
Yeah.
I was born, in Southern Oregon. We had 18 acres of land, and then behind us was just BLM land, which is just in the US, it's just government property that's you're able to go on, you're allowed to go onto it, and it's just forest. And I would just spend all of my time there.
Mm,
And
mm.
I just had always such a deep connection with Mother Gaia. When I was 19, I was going to go to college, and my higher self redirected me another pivot. And I traveled the world and became a scuba diving instructor. And so I was just under the water. I lived in Bundaberg, Queensland for a
Oh,
while,
wild.
and spent all this time under the water with Gaia. So Mother Gaia, I get so emotional. She's been such a treasure for me.
Mm.
She's been such a guiding force, such a nurturing space for me. And I spend a lot of time in her when I need clarity or when I need information. It's just amazing how it just drops in.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a reset for you as well to get back into the nature and recover that centeredness that nature brings to us.
Yeah, I mean, I go there almost every day. So for me, it's more of like a self-care. It's a requirement for me. Something I make happen.
Mhm. Do you recommend that to your clients as well?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend it to all humans. She is our mother, she's the mother of humanity. She will nurture you. Like she's in my most challenging of times, like during the divorce where there was a lot of emotion and I was really scared. I would just go out into her and just ask her to help me. And I swear I'd go on a walk and, I'd start in one state of being. And by the end of the walk, I would be in a completely different state of being. She just sucks all of that off of you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What perspectives do you bring to conversations around healing, spirituality, embodiment, and the forgotten power of the inner feminine?
For one, I really believe in embodiment. I believe that we have to learn to be present in the now. This is one of the things I teach my clients is how to be fully present here. Again, how to use our breath because, humans love to mind fuck themselves and just concept after concept after concept. And you can understand the concepts, but embodying the concept, living the concept, the teaching is a completely different state. And so embodiment to me is imperative to truly creating your life. And, all humans, regardless of their sexual identity, have inner feminine energy. And the true feminine, the divine feminine, hasn't been on our planet for over 5,000 years, and she's coming back on. And so, for all of us to understand her within ourselves, to reconnect to her, understand what she means and how she moves through us, is what's really going to save our planet.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, the reconnection and to being in accord with the universal plan, which I think is balance, really.
Yeah. I see it as a trinity. Yeah. Mother, father, child.
Mm, mm. You have a deep connection to divinity with your work, and you obviously express a lot of Christ consciousness with your understanding. Are there any other spirit or entities that you work with as a part of that and bring through in your work?
Yeah, I mean, Ma Kali has been with me for years. She came to me and started opening up my voice, where I started to speak in tongue and use my voice. It was a very intense process for me. And she's always been in my space of teaching me how to consume energy, transform it. She's the death and rebirth. So she's been a very powerful figure. And They also work with a lot of wise women healers who are these ascended masters, but they hold that feminine energy. Um, and then there's a lot of celestial beings that I work with. And really, it's just who desires to show up and partake.
Yeah, I think it would probably be appropriate pretty much per individual in that case.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly.
Do you work online with people, or is it in person a lot?
No, it's primarily online. I used to work in person, and then I did both before COVID, and then COVID, I just went online. And I'm going to be doing some more in-person stuff now. I will say I like the online because people are in their space, in their home,
Mm.
and there's a lot of like sense of safety that comes with that I've really noticed and enjoyed. But yes, I do love in person, so I am doing some events and things like that in person.
Nice, nice. So basically, you're actually helping people discover the wealth of their being and their sexuality. Now, you've been speaking a lot about the divine feminine. Do you work with men at all?
Yes, I do. I adore men, and I adore the men who are here working to connect deeper to themselves. And it's all the same, right? Because in the light of God, we really have no sex. So we all have inner feminine, we all have inner masculine, we all have inner child, and it's about coming into harmony with that trinity of self.
Mm, mm. And when you're working with men, how different is it for you for the way you work with them? I mean, you sound like you're actually focused specifically on the divine feminine, but when it's working with the masculine, how do you work with that?
Yeah, I I'm focused on the divine feminine because that's what's lacking.
Yes.
But even with women, I'm working a lot with their own inner masculine energy because it's just another part that we have to work with. What I find with men is, I have so much compassion because women have been really suppressed in so many ways, sexually, emotionally, via expression, and men as well. Men haven't felt safe in their emotional body. They haven't felt safe in their feminine energy. And so to help men to reconnect to that, because that's all the pelvis, right? So when we speak to emotional body, we speak to sexual power, personal power, wealth, all of that resides in our sacral and a little bit in our root chakras. So all of humanity needs to really embody those lower chakras, and men aren't any different from that. And I just find, it takes a little bit more for men to really connect to their emotions, understand what they're feeling. But when they do, it's so beautiful to see how, really their relationships and everything around them transpires as they really connect to that emotional intelligence within themselves.
Mm. It sounds like it's truly a transmutation of all of the, would you say, like imbalances that are actually happening in our society and our world right now that you're doing. And that's a great thing. I mean, people need this right now. They need to actually reconnect with the universe in such a way that it expands the understanding of what we are and who we are and where we're all going. And a lot of people talk about the manifestation of the 5D reality and how that's going to unfold. Do you have any advice for people for, say, stepping into their power, even in the simplest sort of ways that you've discovered from your experiences?
Breath.
Breath. Okay. Yeah,
Breath,
that's a good one.
breath, breath. I mean, yes, we can do breath work, and I love breath work, and we can just consciously breathe. And the more that we take our awareness to our breath throughout the day and just feel the breath and be with our breath, we learn to first and foremost turn to our breath. And this is really powerful in times where we're going through challenge, times that we're shifting energy. We automatically start to turn to the breath and let the breath guide us through the challenge rather than focusing on the external and the challenge and the woe is me. So it becomes this tool that, of course, it's always there, it's always free. And as you play with it more, you open up different areas of your body that have been contracted. Oftentimes when people are first learning to breathe into their belly, it doesn't feel good. It wasn't for me. The first time I consciously breathed into my belly, it took me 40 minutes to kind of like subtly unlock it. I didn't even unlock it all the way, but just to get some sort of movement in there because I had so much tension in my solar plexus. And so at first, yes, it doesn't necessarily feel good, but you open up all this space in your body, which opens up your meridians, opens up your chakras, allows for the Shakti to really, really move. And then, like I said, you can use the breath to calm yourself down. You can use the breath to activate yourself. So I recommend anybody just start becoming conscious, becoming intimate with your breath. You will find that it's an amazing tool and vessel for your transformation and evolution.
Mm, mm. How do people basically discover your services? I mean, what sort of stages are people in life that come to you? I mean, where are they? Are they stuck, or where are they when they think, okay, well, we need to find somebody, and they look for you?
Yeah. So I work with a lot of people who, yeah, feel stuck. Sometimes, I work with a lot of women who are successful in a lot of ways, but they are not embodied, and they feel this like what I felt, this numbness, is kind of like lackluster, this non-aliveness, right? Like, okay, they can accomplish wealth and success, but like, where is the pleasure, right? So I work with a lot of women like that. I also work with a lot of coaches, mentors, healers who are really looking to open their gifts up more, because that is what that sexual power, the Shakti, really does, is really expand that, what I call sexy as fuck genius self. And then I have people who are just really wanting to create something specifically. Like, I actually work with a lot of women who are struggling to conceive babies, because it's not any different. Conceiving a baby isn't any different than conceiving a business or conceiving a relationship. It's all the same. So I help them to conceive in the same fashion that I work through everything else.
Brilliant, brilliant. So for people that have heard you today, how would they find you online, for example?
Absolutely. So my website is alarasage.com, and on there I have a great ebook called Sexy as Fuck Manifestation, which goes into a lot about what we talked today about. And, sexy as fuck, we do things differently, even in the spiritual world, let alone the normals. And I'm on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Alara Sage,
Excellent,
LinkedIn.
excellent, excellent. All right, I'll post all those links in the show notes. Now, before I go, is there any questions that I could have asked that you think I should have asked, but I didn't?
No, I feel like this was a really thoughtful and beautiful conversation of depth and wisdom. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate the time you've shared and the information you've shared. Alara, it's really good to have people like you in the world helping people to find their way.
Thank you.
All right, I'll say goodbye to listeners. Well, that was a very interesting and dense conversation. What I mean by dense is like it concentrated so much of the information really quickly. And sometimes that happens with recordings. You actually just get through everything really quickly. So this one's a bit of a shorter show, but still has lots of really good information in it. And if you've enjoyed today's show, please reach out to Alara at her website, which will be in the show notes, and say thank you. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. And then if you need to contact her as well, please do so. You'll find that I'm sure she'll actually be able to assist some people and with finding their way in the world. And please, if you've been watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you're on a podcast player, please give us 5 stars. That'd be really nice. And say something nice. And then that way other people can find these conversations and enjoy them. And if you wanted to share this to one friend, that'd be appreciated as well, because more ears means more people enjoying these conversations as well. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. And until next time, it's bye for now.